Hello, my people. I'm going to do a quick little discussion about the midterm and what you need to do to prepare for this midterm. The first thing you need to do is make sure you are using this midterm review. I told you in class that if you do the review well and you get all points for all parts, you can replace one of your daily grades with 100, so it's well worth your time. So let's look at this review really quickly. We first start with our grammar rules. Part of the test is you will have revising and editing. You will read a revising and editing passage, and you will answer questions about how to revise this passage and edit it to make it better. So make sure you know these rules going in. If you happen to come across a question that you don't know the specific rule for, remember you can use a dictionary, and in the back of your dictionary you have a section for grammar. Use that resource. So in case you don't remember one of these rules and you're taking the test and you can't take out your review, look in the back of the dictionary. But go ahead and make sure you know these rules, because you'll have to use it for revising and editing, and then you'll also have to use those rules when you're doing your persuasive essay. It's a part of our writing, okay? All right, if you read these, take notes, study these, it's 50 points. And there are quite a few pages. And it's only because whenever I made the copy, I made the wording is very large. The font is large. The next part of the review, it's 20 points, has to do with knowing your academic vocabulary. You're going to have to read several pieces, an expository piece, a literary nonfiction, and a poem. And with those pieces, you're going to have questions that ask you about some of these things. It'll ask you about syntax, diction, tone. It might ask you about what is some anecdotal evidence here. Which one is anecdotal evidence? Where's the claim? Where's the hook? If you have to read a persuasive piece. So I want you to make sure that you have these words defined. You know what they mean. Not just that you have the definition memorized, but you actually know what they mean. That's very important. You know how to analyze for those things, okay? Because that's a huge part of it. So the dictionary definition, I want to suggest that you actually use the definition that's in the back of your Springboard book for this and to study that definition, just because those definitions are a little bit more concise, and they are the definitions we've been using in class. So make sure you're using the definition from the Springboard book. It's worth 20 points. Okay. The other part of the midterm is you have to write a persuasive essay. We've gone through the parts of the persuasive. I've taken you through step by step how to write a persuasive essay. You can get the persuasive outline and examples of all of these parts of the persuasive essay on AP TV. You need to review this, take some Cornell notes, and that's worth 5 points, okay? But the part of the persuasive that I am mostly looking for when I read your persuasive this time, I'm looking for the backbone of the persuasive, because we haven't really delved into persuasive as deeply as we have literary analysis. I realize that. So when I read your essays, I'm looking for the backbone of the argument. Do you have a claim, a thesis that is answering the prompt? Okay? Do you have a claim or thesis that's answering the prompt in the intro? Is it a reasonable claim or thesis? That'll be worth 1 point. Then I'm looking for these guys right here, your support. And part of your support is, do you give a reason why you believe what you believe in your claim? 1 point. Then you have to prove your reason is valid with evidence. Okay, and if you go back and review these notes to remember what you can use for evidence, you can use a personal anecdote. You can use something from history, which is also anecdotal. You can use something from the news, which is anecdotal, a current event. You can use research or facts, which end up being empirical and logical evidence. But there are all types of evidence you can use to support, to say my reason is a valid reason. Okay, that'll be 1 point for that evidence. Then, are you explaining how your evidence, in fact, supports your reason? Are you explaining how this evidence is important? Okay, and if you do that, you'll get 1 point altogether, 4 points, yay. And it's probably a pretty good essay, okay? So I'm looking for these 4 elements for this essay, so make sure you're including that, and you go back and look at the persuasive outline notes with examples to review what that looks like. Quickly, you can look at these released STAR essays that we went through in class, and we identified the parts of the essay to remember, okay, my claim goes in my intro. Maturity of the mind is gained through experience, not age. Okay, I'm using the language from the prompt in my claim so I know what that position is. My reason why, okay, is because we grow from difficult experiences. That was the reason. Evidence, this writer gave us evidence, a personal anecdote about one time in her life when she tore her ACL and she matured because of it. And she explains how this evidence proves that we grow through adversity, which is her reason here when she says, I gained respect for my teammates and better understood how I could help them and myself be successful. I came to realize in life the single experience matured me as a player and as a human being. Okay, beyond my years. So she explains it. This is your backbone for your persuasive. If you've got these elements, you've got a pretty strong argument. The hook, the call to action, concession, refutation, those things are great, but those are just added bonus, your cherry on top. If you don't have these elements, you won't have a strong persuasive. So make sure you have those. So review these STAR essays that I gave you guys. Use it as a model and make sure you can do that for your persuasive on the STAR. Okay. So after you've done that, the last part of the review is you've got to take Cornell notes over this video that I am creating right now, 25 points, and make sure you are actually doing those elements. Okay, so we know that this is the review. Get that turned in to me on the day of your final, except for third period. You guys can turn it in to me on Monday, and then you will get to replace a daily grade, which is a pretty good, that's a pretty good deal. So take me up on it. All right, test taking strategies. Guys, this is a skills-based test. It's asking you to read a piece and answer some questions about it. Here are my suggestions as to what you need to do to prepare for that. You need to know how to take a test like this. When you have reading, make sure you're doing metacognitive markers as you read. And all a metacognitive marker is when you mark something that you think is important or interesting. All right? Mark those elements that you think are important or interesting. Oh, here we go. For example, let's say you have a poem that you have to read, which you guys will have a poem that you have to read. We would mark it up, just like we did with My Papa's Waltz. Now, this took us a long time and we really talked about it, so it probably won't look like all of this because we really dug deep into this particular poem. But When we read, we circled or underlined or put a check or put brackets around those things that we thought were important, were interesting. If I was reading and I didn't understand something, I'd put a question mark next to that part. And then after I read, I go back and say, now, do I understand it now that I've read the rest? If not, what is it that's preventing me from understanding it? Is it a vocabulary word? Is it that I don't understand what's actually happening here? And I had to figure out that detail. What is it that's making me not understand? Okay. But I mark as I read, real quick, no words, just marking. Then after I read, I can quickly go back and think about tone and theme. I write down some tone words that I think relate to what I've underlined, what I've circled really quickly. Then I look at theme and try to figure out theme. I start with my big ideas. And my big ideas, I always do this when I'm reading a poem especially, but with all my reading, I would write, this poem is about, and I list those things that I think this poem is about, those elements. This poem is about abuse, dancing, family, fighting, father-son relationship, love, all right? It's about all those elements. So then I look at my tone words, and I look at my theme, and I say, based on these tones, what do I think the author is saying about abuse, dancing, family, fighting, father-son relationships, all of those elements? And I come up with kind of a thematic statement. Obviously, this has been revised a couple of times. Theodore Roethke defines a father's loving relationship with his son as one that can be marred by abuse and conflict. Okay, so I've looked at the tones and I've looked at all of those big ideas that this poem is about, and I put them together in a thematic statement. And then I go and answer those multiple choice questions. I have a good understanding of what this poem means first. Now, I do this quickly. It doesn't have to be perfect. Your writing and brainstorming can look like this, because you're not writing an essay here. But you've got to have an understanding of what the reading is about and what the tones are, just a basic understanding, in order to really be successful on those multiple choice. Okay? So take a minute, no longer than a minute, to jot down what the poem is about and jot down a thematic statement. Just get your idea down. Okay? Doesn't have to be perfect. And then I go to answer those multiple choice questions. So I use metacognitive markers as I read. I write down this poem, or if it's an essay, or if it's a short story, whatever it happens to be that you're reading, is about. I take a minute to do that, to figure it out, and then I answer my questions. Now, the multiple choice questions on reading sometimes can be difficult, and they're difficult because sometimes we have two questions that look like they are true to what we're reading. When you are answering multiple choice questions, know exactly what the question is asking you, because let's say the question is asking about the tone of a certain stanza in My Papa's Waltz. Okay? If we look at the tones in this stanza, giddy, playful, they're different than the tone here, which is acerbic and irritable. Let's say the question asks, in stanza 1, what is the tone that the author is conveying? Okay? And the answer choices are giddy, irritable, acerbic, okay? And I look and say, well, in the whole poem, it is giddy and irritable. But then if I pay attention to the question is only asking about stanza 1. Oh, now I know it's giddy. Now I know it's playful, okay? you really have to look at the question and make sure I'm answering the question, not answering something else about this poem, but what is that question asking me? So pay attention to that as well. All right? Okay. Last part. Use your dictionary. I cannot emphasize enough the value of that particular resource. Make sure you're using your dictionary. You have definitions of words in there that you can use on your persuasive, for your reading, for your questions, but also in the back you have a grammar section that you can use for revising and editing. Use that dictionary. It's your resource. Use it. Okay. So guys, you're going to do so well on this midterm. I have all the faith, all kinds of faith in you guys. I know you're going to do well. You're going to make me proud. You're going to make yourselves proud. So enjoy the test, which I know you will. Do your best. Do your midterm review, and I'll see you guys on the day you take your test. Okay. See you later. Bye.